Indeed, it's a special day today because we are at Teen Murti Bhavan, the residence of the first Prime Minister of India, Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru. Hello and welcome, I'm Ashutosh Kapoor and I will be talking to Mr. Purushottam Agrawal, who is a retired professor from JNU, who has written a lot of books on Nehru and India's ideologies, as well as his articles have been published in houses like The Scroll and The Wire. So, what do you understand by the term idea of India and how Jawaharlal Nehru became its flag bearer?
See, idea of India is actually a contemporary political and cultural articulation of the traditional wisdom of India. That is, discarding the lure of extremes in favor of enlightened middle. Samyak, as Bhagavan Buddha used to call it. Samyak Achar, Samyak Vichar, and all that. And even before Bhagavan Buddha, the idea of having a consensus rooted in moral values, not in opportunism, essentially has been the true spirit of Indian civilization and culture. And it was not only Nehru, it was not only Congress during the freedom movement, but all progressive trends of freedom movement were essentially articulating this kind of idea of India in their own way, even if they were critical of Congress. For example, revolutionaries like Bhagat Singh or constitutional politicians like Ambedkar, even when they were critiquing Congress for certain things, they were critiquing Congress for not being sufficiently progressive on economic matters or on social matters. So this is the idea of India. India as an inclusive society, India as a forward-looking society. Nehru came to be associated with it for two reasons. One, during the freedom movement, he was one of the most vocal and most articulate spokespersons of this idea. Secondly, after independence, it came to him to really implement this in the real world of politics. And he did it. For example, it was very tempting those days, please recall 50s, to join either the US camp or the USSR camp.
Yes.
Nehru chose the path of non-alignment, and many critics of him today very conveniently forget that today if we are having some international image, some respect or some standing in international arena, it is precisely because of the farsightedness of Nehru, who did not allow India to be attached to USSR or to USA. Similarly, in economic matters, he followed the policy of mixed economy.
Okay.
And if you remember, in the subprime crisis of 2008, President Obama had to remark that business cannot be given full freedom. There has to be some regulation. On the other hand, the Soviet Union disintegrated because of the total curtailment of business initiatives. Nehru here also tried to strike the golden middle path. So for Nehru, idea of India was basically an attempt to resist the temptation of going to the extreme and to follow the path of enlightened middle. And that is why he came to be identified with the idea of India so deeply.
Even Nehru's school of thought states that there are four pillars, and one of which is democracy.
Yes.
Nehru said that it's a way of thinking, way of reacting to circumstances, way of putting up things when you dislike them.
Yeah.
So, how do you think Jawaharlal Nehru's role was important in nurturing the democracy of the independent India?
Most important, most crucial. Because Nehru was a democrat to a fault.
Okay.
And in fact, almost 10 years before independence, when he was undoubtedly the most popular leader of the subcontinent, rivaled only by Gandhiji, and amongst the youth, in fact, Gandhi came second, so far as popularity is concerned.
Nehru was the first.
Yes, certainly. You read Bhagat Singh about Nehru, you will come to realize that. You read any young person of that time who was young at that time, you would see that how popular Nehru was. And it was during those days that an article appeared in Modern Review, a respected newspaper of that time. It was titled, "We Do Not Need Any Seizures." And it was written by Chanakya, in which it was stated that though Jawaharlal Nehru is Democrat, he is sophisticated, but he has some kind of tendencies which can degenerate into dictatorial attitude.
Of Nehru.
Yes, and no popularity should be allowed to reach to that level. Therefore, we should love Nehru, we should like Nehru, but we should not adulate him to the extent that he gives into the temptation of becoming a dictator. And this Chanakya was Jawaharlal himself.
He published this article itself. That is a very wonderful story.
So Jawaharlal Nehru wrote an article saying that Jawaharlal Nehru should not be allowed to become a dictator. Because in India, we do not need dictators, we will not have any dictators. Number one. Number two, when the first general elections took place in 1951 and 52, so see, we Indians are supposed to be proud of this and proud of that. And some people constantly ask us to take pride in fantasies like a space shuttle in Vedic era. I think there are more important things to be proud of in near history. Do you know when the Britishers got universal franchise?
No, when is it, sir?
They got it only in 1928. Before that, women could not vote. Before that, people without property could not vote.
So you're talking about England.
I am talking about England, the birthplace of, supposedly the birthplace of democracy. Magna Carta was declared in 12th century, and it took England full 8 centuries to allow people without property and women to vote. And incidentally, it's just a footnote, but important footnote. In 1909, when many Democrats in Britain, and particularly the women, were taking out a march in support of their demand of voting rights to women, there was one participant in that march who was not Britisher, who had come from South Africa for some other work, but he joined that march. And this South Africa Indian was Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi. Okay. Now contrast this. And again, a very progressive, very rich, prosperous European country, Switzerland, women got voting right only in 70s. In India, everybody, irrespective of sex, gender, caste, creed, education, social status, got the voting right in the very first election. Every Indian was theoretically allowed, if he was 21 years of age, to vote in those first elections. That was Nehru's deep commitment to democracy.
Wonderful, sir. Even the second thought of his idea.
And not only Nehru's, by the way.
Yes, sir.
We must clarify this. It is not just Nehru. The whole leadership which has come out of the freedom movement, including Sardar Patel. Yes, please, next.
So the second thought as well, that is secularism. So Nehru believed and said once that I can lose all elections in India but not give a part to some sort of communal tension or communalism. But with the rise of this Hindutva brand of politics, sir, how much is it under threat?
It is under threat very much. And secularism being under threat is basically the very idea of India being under threat. Because secularism has acquired a certain, particularly Indian connotation in this country. In standard English language dictionaries, secularism means separation of state from religion. In India, rightly so, it has come to signify, as they describe it, Sarva Dharma Sambhav. Equal respect or equidistance from all religions, and not from cultures. In Indian tradition, by the way, if you recall, officially secularism is not translated as Dharma Nirpekshta. Constitution mein, it is translated as Panth Nirpekshta.
Panth Nirpekshta. What does that mean?
I'll tell you.
Yes.
Because in Indian tradition of philosophy and linguistics, dharma does not exactly mean religion.
Mm-hmm.
Dharma means the laws of nature. Dharma means law. And therefore dharma means law of society as well. And panth means something which can be translated as religion in English. Therefore we talk of panth nirpekshta in constitution, not of dharma nirpekshta. So anyway, now whether panth nirpekshta or dharma nirpekshta, whatever, the point is that a tolerance and openness and a celebration of diversity. India is nothing if it is not diverse. It is defined by diversity. And this diversity is not just about religions. I mean, I am a Hindu. Supposedly you are also a Hindu. Can we understand anything which Tamil Hindu talks to us?
Not at all.
Maybe only through English.
Definitely.
Right? I come from a cultural background which is strictly vegetarian. My wife is a Hindu from Bihar. And she is a non-vegetarian. Okay?
Yes.
So it is diversity is not just about inter-religions, it is also intra-religion. A respect of diversity, in fact, as I told you, the celebration of diversity is the core of idea of India.
So what the
And
present
particularly
situation
the communalism, when you define nation in terms of a religious community, you actually go against not only the democratic politics, but the very, very gist of Indian cultural experience. Therefore, this rise of Hindutva politics or any kind of communalism is indeed a threat to the idea of India.